Hey guys, so I wanted to record the Q&A for you guys. I know a lot of you asked some questions on my recent post about prep, so here we go. So the first question, okay, so how much do you get to eat / drink the day of the show? I'm curious if people ever feel sick after all the post-show treats or if your bodies are stoked for the extra food. I'm sure you're fairly comfortable in your posing now, but for your first show, how much did you practice? Was it a big learning curve, and did you have a posing coach? So this is a long question, so to answer the first part, how much do you get to eat and drink the day before a show and the day of a show? So this is really just dependent on you, your body, your coach, what your plan is going into peak week. I've done it different ways. So I've done peak week in ways where I've front loaded. So I loaded more towards the beginning of the week. So like the Monday, Tuesday, and then I flushed out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we just like manipulated carbs on the Friday, Saturday to kind of maintain my level of fullness. So really I wasn't eating very much extra the day before the show. I've done shows where I've loaded the Friday, which is the day right before the show, and I did get to eat some extra carbs. It was kind of like a refeed throughout the whole day, not just like a meal at the end of the day. Like I said, this is all dependent on you, your body, and your coach. It's all individualized for what works best for you. But for me personally, I feel best when I've loaded either the Wednesday or the Thursday and then had a day or two to flush out. Personally, I sometimes hold water after a cheat or after a high carb day. So I like to have that extra day to flush out the water because my body looks best the second or third day after a refeed or a cheat meal. So like I said, I like to load midweek, and the amount that you're going to load is all dependent on your coach. Like I know I have friends who only get a meal the night before the show day. So like steak and potatoes or burger and fries the night before the show day. Or then there's me or other people who have like a full refeed day the day before the show. And then there's other people who load every single day leading up to the show, like gradual increases in carbs every single day leading up to the show. So like I said, it's just all dependent on you and your coach. On show day, we try not to eat too much just because the more food you have in you, the more like protruded and bloated and bigger your waist is going to appear. So we try to keep meals minimal. For me personally, your main load should be leading up to the show, not necessarily on show day. Like you shouldn't bank on show day to be the day where you fill out. You want to be ready for Saturday, and then Saturday's kind of like topping things off. So I usually only have like 2 meals before prejudging, and they'll just be small meals, usually like rice cakes and a little bit of fish, and some coconut oil or like a peanut butter or something like that. Like I said, you're not banking on Saturday to fill out. You're banking on the days before leading up to the show. Have I ever had a posing coach? I've never had a posing coach. Everything I've done is just from practicing myself in the mirror. It's from watching numerous YouTube videos, watching other competitors that I admire, and how they pose and trying to mimic the same thing, and then kind of add my own twist to it or add my own sass, my own characteristics, etc. So how much did I practice for posing? A lot of people do it differently. Like I know people who spend like a solid hour like every other day, just posing, just going through the routine over and over and over again. Personally, I feel like I can't spend that much time posing because then I just kind of half-ass it and just kind of like don't do it properly, and I just want to like get it done and over with, so I'm being sloppy and I'm not giving my best. So what I find works best for me is I like to just do 10 minutes after every single training session. So every single day I just do 5 to 10 minutes going through my routine, really nailing it. And the number one thing I can advise you is to video yourself posing, because this is where you're going to see where you can make slight changes. Because when you're watching yourself in the mirror, everything looks flawless, but it's when you record yourself where you see, okay, my hand doesn't look right there, or I should be twisted more here, my legs should be propped differently. So definitely video yourself, and I honestly think if you practice every single day, a little bit every day, then you will your posing will become more natural to you, and it'll be like second nature almost. For my first show, I probably didn't really pose a lot, to be honest, because I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't think posing was that big of a deal at the time, but it definitely is. And another thing I could recommend for you guys is to definitely practice your walk, because the walk is make it or break it. Like when you see somebody walk on stage like Bambi and they're just like really slow to walk because they're scared they're gonna topple over, or they're like all hunched over because they're like nervous being on heels, it really shows. And it does. Like you can have the best posing routine, but if you can't walk on heels, it kind of takes away from that. So don't only practice your posing, but practice walking on and off stage. When you're posing, pretend like the judges are here and you're walking on stage, you're presenting to the judges and you're walking off stage. Like every time you pose, you want to make it like it's actually show day, because this will leave out any unknowns. And I also recommend practicing if the judges say, okay, competitor 77 and 66 switch places, like practice that. Practice how you're going to be standing on the side of the stage. Practice your individual routine. Practice your comparisons in the lineup. Just try and practice everything you possibly can, so there's literally no stone unturned when it is show day. Be prepared and expect the unexpected, so you're ready to nail it, and there's no doubt that you are going to be the one who knows what to do. Another tip is to know your number, because they will say so-and-so switch with so-and-so, and a lot of people like are blank or just don't know their own number, their competitor number, and it's really embarrassing when they have to call your name 10 times because you don't know your number. So know your damn number and be listening for it and ready to move, because you want that center spot. So listen for your number so you can move to that center spot. You don't want to miss that. Okay, next question. How do you handle being backstage for long periods of time if you don't know anyone? So I'm very open and bubbly, and I like to talk to people, and I'm a social butterfly. So it's not hard for me to meet people backstage, and I usually know somebody doing this show, whether it's from Instagram or a friend or something like that. So being backstage is not hard for me, because I'm easy to talk to other people with. But if you're a shy person, I can see how it can be intimidating with a bunch of people that you're actually competing against, and you might be nervous to like try and talk to somebody. So sometimes what I do is, I remember when I first started, I really liked to be in my own zone. So I would bring music and a blanket, and I would just lay down backstage, because you want to keep your feet up to prevent inflammation and water retention in your legs. So I just bring my own blanket, my music, and just kind of like zone out. You'll see a lot of people doing that, because a lot of people do need to like focus on themselves and focus on being in the moment. So you can do that. Another thing you can do is, if the venue is attached to the hotel, you can stay in your room until last minute, or until like intermission, which is before figure, and then bikini is usually after figure. So just like halfway between the show, and then go down kind of last minute, so you're not sitting backstage for like 6 hours. Plus, you don't really want to be backstage when the guys are all there, because they want the space too, right? So I recommend to go backstage when it's the women's part of competing, which is usually after intermission. And either bring a book or bring your music and zone out, or be ready to like socialize with everybody. It's totally up to you, but at the same time, you want to remember, like, show day is not just about getting on stage. It's about meeting people. It's about the friendships that you're making. It's about the whole entire experience. It's not just about stepping on stage. If you make it just about stepping on stage and you don't do as well as you expected, that whole weekend's going to be awful for you, and it's not going to be a good memory. But say you met all these amazing, wonderful women backstage, you have new friendships now, new connections, you just sparked a new friendship, but you didn't place as well on stage. Well, that's okay, because look at all the other things that you made out of the weekend. You met so many other amazing people, new friendships, new opportunities, and the placing doesn't really matter. But like I said, if you didn't make all those friends and you didn't place well, then the weekend kind of feels like a waste. So make the most of the whole experience. Don't just bank on the stage to be your only memory of the weekend. Yeah, that's my best advice I could give for that. So my next question is, what is one food that you can't live without on prep? Honestly, there's like 100 foods that I could think of. Not 100, because I probably don't eat 100 foods, but I think my top two would be fish. Like, I love fish. Like, I can't live life without fish, let alone prep. And two, I think my rice cakes with coconut oil. Like, I actually oh, maybe my zoats. I don't know, like, I really like all the foods I eat, so it's hard for me to just pick one. But my top three would be zoats, rice cakes with coconut oil, and my fish. I definitely couldn't live without fish, though, so I don't know. Those are my top three. Hopefully it never comes down to the day that I have to decide between the three. Over time, have you been able to increase calories consumed as your body becomes more efficient at cutting fat? This is a really good question. So this is actually really interesting to me. So after a show, you reverse diet, and the goal is to build your metabolism and to maximize your caloric intake. So the next time you prep, you can hopefully diet on higher macros, right? So I have found that over time, yes, I'm able to prep on a little bit higher macros because I've reverse dieted between shows. But I've also noticed that my body doesn't really start making changes until I've dropped to a certain point. And it's always the same point. So whenever my body drops to like the certain macros, I'm not going to name the macros because I don't want somebody to think like this is the magic number. But once I hit that specific macro, that's when my body starts making like insane changes. So I've noticed that no matter how high I was able to get my calories in previous off seasons, or like in the previous off season, it's always that same baseline number where my body starts to make crazy changes. But I will say, like, this last off season, this is the most I've eaten on a consistent daily basis. This most recent off season is the most cheats I've ever had in my life, probably. I would say like this most recent off season has been my most productive and my most enjoyable, just because I was able to eat so much more than I thought I could. I was able to eat cheat meals 1 to 3 times a week, which I was always scared to do before. And I felt pretty, I wouldn't say lean, but I felt comfortable in my body, and I felt like I held a really good shape despite eating so much and despite having all these cheat meals. So I feel like with each off season, your body's composition changes because you're adding more muscle, and I feel like after prep and after each off season, your body's overall composition just continues to change, but for the best. So I felt like my shape was just entirely different than last off season, and I hope my next off season is even better, and I think it will be. And I think that I will continue to increase I feel like my calories will be even higher than they were my most recent off season, because your body just becomes more efficient, I feel. But like I said, it's hard to predict, and my off seasons are never extremely long. Like, my longest off season has maybe been like 4 or 5 months between shows. I don't take that much time off between shows, but I do try and make the most of it. I don't recommend that for everybody. I'm somebody who like lives and breathes this lifestyle or this prep life, and I feel like competing is a part of my life. I've made it a lifestyle for myself, and that isn't the case with a lot of people. So not everybody can do that, but that's why my off seasons have been shorter. And I also feel like it's different for bikini versus a figure competitor or a bodybuilder, because they need to make more significant changes than a bikini athlete, just because when it comes to bodybuilding and figure and those divisions require a lot more muscle, it takes a lot longer to build that muscle. Not saying bikini doesn't need muscle, because I'm still always striving to grow and to put on the lean mass, especially my delts and my glutes. But I'm just saying it's a lot less muscle compared to what is needed for figure or bodybuilding. Are we allowed to shower after the first coat of tan? I'm just wondering when to wash my hair. So what happens for the tanning process is, well, for the CPA anyways, we get tanned with Absolute Touch. That's the tanning company who is associated with the CPA. And what happens is, on the Friday night, you will get your first coat of tan. And then on Saturday morning before the show, you will get your second coat of tan. So the Friday night, after your first coat of tan, you cannot get wet. You cannot wash your face. You cannot wash your hands. You cannot get splashes of pee up your leg. You cannot get wet. So what I recommend is showering either the Thursday night or shower Friday morning before your tan. After you get your tan, don't even try washing your hair because you're just going to make a mess. Just shower before the tan. It's that simple. Don't make the mistake and rinse off the tan on the Friday night, because then you will be lighter than everybody else come Saturday. And if you're lighter, your lines aren't going to look as good. You're going to stick out from the rest of your lineup and the rest of your class. It's just a mess. So don't rinse after you have your tan. No more water. That's it. You're done. Okay? So wash your hair before your first coat of tan on the Friday. How do you handle cravings? Do you ever slip up and just want to eat everything? 100% yes. I'm human. The hardest part about prepping and dieting for me is the nutrition. I'm not 100% all the time. I honestly have the biggest sweet tooth ever, and I find it extremely hard to stick to my diet. If I have a craving, it's just very, 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 very hard for me, and I'm continuing to improve and continuing to better myself and find the willpower from within. When it comes down to it, honestly, it's just willpower. You need to see the end goal and see what you want and understand, like, in this moment, I can surpass this craving. You have to understand that food is always going to be there, and you just have to make it through that hard time. And honestly, like, there's no easy way to do it. A few tips I can give you is to get out of the kitchen, because for me, I'm always in the kitchen. Like, my working desk is right next to the kitchen. So if I'm having insane cravings, I have to go into my bedroom and just chill. I have to just get out of the kitchen. Another thing I like to do is I like to make a hot beverage. So I'll either have some tea or I make some decaf coffee. Another thing is I like to have a pickle or some sauerkraut. I find that, like, clenches the craving. I'm not sure why. But yes, I do have cravings a lot, and it's very hard to tell yourself no when another part of you is saying yes. Like, I totally understand, and I'm not perfect. I'm human just like you. The only thing you can do if you do have a slip up is to accept it. If you count macros, you can try and make up for it in your macros for the day. Like, take out some macros from this meal to make up for what you did eat. But if you follow a meal plan and you slipped up, all you can do is accept it, understand that you've made a mistake, but it's not the end of the world. Pick yourself up and move on. The more you stress about it, the more you think about it, the more you let it eat you alive, the worse it's going to be in the end, because you're self-sabotaging yourself. You're creating more cortisol, which is going to create more water retention, more stress. And just by focusing on that so much, it's going to make you want more almost. It's like a psychological thing. So just accept it, move on, realize that you are better than this craving in this moment, and you can surpass this. Get yourself out of the kitchen, make some tea, make some coffee, whatever you need to do. Get out of the house, go for a walk, put on some music, occupy yourself, keep busy. Yes. So the last question asks about carb depletion and carb loading. In my peak week vlog, I go over it in great detail, but essentially I'll give a quick overview. So when you're in your peak week, the goal is to make fine tunes so you can bring your fullest, your tightest, your best package come show day on Saturday. And in order to do that, most people need to replenish their bodies with carbs, because your muscles are usually depleted and flat because you've been working so hard during prep, you've been doing your cardio, you've been eating probably a lot less than you should be, so your body is just flat. So during peak week, for me personally, this peak week between the Monday and the Wednesday is my depleting phase. So I'm eating a little bit less carbs and a little bit less fats every day from Monday to Wednesday. My workouts are higher rep, more sets, so just overall more volume to deplete those muscles, to wear myself out a little bit more, make my muscles a little more flatter. And then come Thursday, that's when I have my refeed or my carb up, and that day is going to replenish all my muscles, hopefully, and fill me right up. And replenish those glycogen stores that you previously depleted. So some may say, well, if you're so depleted, why are you depleting more the last 3 days? It's just to better prepare your body for that carb up. The more depleted you are, then the more likely your muscles are going to intake all the carbs that you are going to be eating, instead of just having them sit and pool in your like midsection where the water will then be held. So the point is to just deplete as much as possible so you can hold up more carbs in general, if that makes sense. Like I said, the depletion and the carb loading is different for everybody. It depends on your coach, on where you at before peak week. Maybe you look perfect and you don't really need to deplete, or you just want to cruise into the show, then you won't necessarily need a depletion and a carb load. You might just stroll into the show. Or say you're already very full before peak week and your muscles just look great, and if you're in bikini and you're like overly full, it can sometimes hinder your placing. It depends on what your coach thinks and what your division is looking for. But if you are too hard or too full, then maybe you won't even load during peak week and you deplete a little bit more. Like, everybody's different, it's hard to say, but a typical peak week is you deplete halfway through the week, then you load, and you rest for the end half of the week. So when I say rest, I mean usually decrease cardio and decrease your volume so your body's more relaxed and so it looks fresh for stage on Saturday. Because you don't want to be sore when you step on stage on Saturday. You don't want inflammation from training. You don't want to be holding water in your legs, and that is all the result of pounding and pounding and pounding away at your body with like intense cardio and intense training. So usually the last few days you tend to taper off a bit and let your body relax, chill, and just zen. So if that wraps up my Q&A, I thank you for watching, and I thank you for those who ask questions. If you guys have any other questions regarding prep, I would love to do another Q&A. I think it's just good to hear some things from another person's perspective, say, and maybe it's just things that you're curious about, whatever. Let me know if you have any other questions down below, and I may do another Q&A for you guys. So I thank you for asking, and I thank you for watching, and I thank you for your love and support, and you guys are just amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you.